Welcome to another episode of Talk Therapy on Central City Radio. I'm your host, Shante Saulsberry, and today we have a very special guest with us today, Angelique, a client of Genesis Women's Center. And Angelique is going to share with us a little bit about some resources, not all, the journey of domestic violence and homelessness, a few quotes in which has inspired her, a little bit of everything. We're just going to give Angelique the floor and allow her to inspire those that are listening and need a bit of uplifting at this time. And so, without further ado, Angelique, welcome to Talk Therapy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about your journey.
At what point would you like me to start?
Start where you feel most comfortable. Let's actually share a little bit of before and then a little bit of being in several different programs at once to be able to reach your level of long-term stability.
Okay. Well, real quick before we do that, I just want to kind of do a PSA. I want people to know that if you are in a dangerous situation, if you're in a dangerous relationship, and that danger can be mental, it can be physical, it can be spiritual, it can be financial, but if you need to get away and you have nowhere to go to the police station. They have the ability to connect you with resources and programs from there, but you do not have to stay another minute, another second. There's a safe place that you can get to.
I love that. Thank you so much. If you're listening, please dial 911 if you feel as if you are in a situation and you need to get out ASAP. Do not worry about tomorrow. Do not worry about what you're going to be leaving behind. Worry about saving your life.
Right. And the life of your little ones. And sometimes even your pets. There's programs out there to foster the pets while you're going through the steps to kind of reclaim your independence and your freedom.
Love it. We forget about that. There are a lack of resources as it pertains to those that are fleeing with pets. Now there has been several different funded organizations that now take pets. So please reach out and find out. The crisis line can provide that information to you.
Yeah. And then also texting 988 is a crisis line. And there's people that are trained there. So if nothing else and you feel like you're kind of teetering, you need the help, you can text 988. And if you are planning to leave your abuser, then I strongly recommend any text or calls you go through and you delete it. That any web searches, you clear your browsers and you delete those things, or go to some place public like a library and look them up there, because those things can be accessed, and I wouldn't want you to be trying to leave and that puts you in danger.
Correct.
All right. Well, there's this long line of abuse, and I will kind of start with the most recent one. I think there was a point where I realized this isn't okay, and I deserve to be treated better than this. I'm not. So I remember I finally got my legs up under me. I started getting some help, some mental health help. And he was talking to me just terrible, just saying mean things. And I remember telling him, you can't talk to me this way. If you can't talk to me in a way that I deserve, that to be respected, then you can leave. And he went in harder. And then I told him, well, and if you can't treat me kindly and lovingly, then you can leave right now. And this man was so bold. He told me, I'm not going anywhere, and you can't do anything about it. And it was true. He had been staying there with us and was more, I was going to have to go through a whole legal process to evict him. Thank heavens, he came home from work the next day, came in and got some of his things and left. Phew. And then that next Monday, he came and handed me divorce papers.
And how did that make you feel?
I was like, cool, what do we do next? And I think that it really got under his skin that I wasn't putting up this big fight. I'm like, okay, this is great, but there are a few things in here that we need to change. Like, we are going to split up the debt that we've accumulated. I'm not carrying all of your debt, right? And I was like, and if you make these changes, I'll go down, sign it, we're good. And he wouldn't. And I think no matter what it is that I would have asked for, he would have said no. I really believe that. And anyway, so this is a big change, right? And so I took my daughter to her therapist. I wanted to make sure that she was okay, that we were checking in with all the big changes. And in that conversation, she disclosed that he had been hurting her too.
And when you say hurting her,
he had been grooming her and molesting her. And I was molested as a kid. And I did what you were supposed to do. I told my mom. And the guy kept coming over. And my dad and my mom would take me over there with them. And that created its own host of problems, right? But once my daughter disclosed this, one of the first things that I said to her was that I'm so sorry this has happened to you. It's not your fault. I told her, or I told the therapist, I was like, what's next? Do I call the police? Do you call the police? I know it needs to get done. Which one of us, like, what's the protocol here, you know? And I told her, I believe you. And that, I think, single-handedly is one of the biggest things. When your child tells you this, your job is not to figure out if they're telling the truth or not. Your job as a parent is to believe them and to advocate for them and to take care of them and to keep them safe, right? We have investigators and all kinds of other people who are going to get involved, and that's their job. Your kid needs to know you believe them. So we're going through this. We got a restraining order, and the man shows up in my son's classroom as a substitute teacher. He's parked down the road watching us, and the straw that broke the camel's back for me was when we were in a Circle K, and he came in and he stood in front of the door and would not leave. I mean, it was like over 20 minutes that he stood there, and I just had to wait, you know. That was when I made the decision to enter a shelter. It's in the midst and throes of COVID, so the world was just already topsy-turvy and difficult, but it was just my son and I at home at that point. The daughter had grown up and went on her own, and we were in the domestic violence shelter, and they called us and told us that we had until 11 o'clock the next day to find something because they lost funding.
Yeah.
They lost funding. And that's really what kind of started the journey on our homelessness. And I'm sorry. I feel like I veered left. Did I answer your question?
I think you did. I think it's more so, not so much as us staying on a question-based journey. You know, I just want you to express, be transparent, share your story, and just allow the listeners to kind of flow with us. So,
okay.
I'm okay, because I don't remember what I asked.
Okay. Well,
so I think
we're doing great.
We're
then.
good. Yeah, I was kind of intrigued by the story, so I forgot what I asked. But that was good stuff because I'm listening, and you know how you validated what it is that your daughter told you, and stories were kind of playing in my head as you were saying that. You know, as a parent, It's our job to believe our children. And I hear so many stories as to children fearing telling their parents that someone has touched them or raped them or molested or whatever the word is that they use. They're not sharing this information out of fear. And our children shouldn't fear telling us something like this. Now, we also have to remember that this type of act comes with these rapists, rapers, or whoever, whatever we call them.
Predators.
Yeah, we'll go with that. They say other things like, if you tell, I'm going to kill your mother, I'm going to kill your sister, kill your brother, kill your pet, kill
That's
your...
part of the grooming.
Correct. So we have to be mindful of that too, that maybe they didn't tell because there's fear that mommy would die, daddy would die, or what have you. A lot of times I've heard that a woman, she didn't tell her dad because she feared her dad would kill him, and then dad would go to jail, and or what have you. So there's all of these different things as to why a female and or a male doesn't express something so important. Right. And then they carry this load with them all the way up into their adulthood. And at that point, they realize, I have another level of healing that I need to work on.
Yep.
And that now is brought into relationships. So as you were talking, I was thinking of all these things and all these other factors and all these different lines that come from one different situation. So,
well, and to kind of add to that, I wasn't the first person my daughter told. So I'd gotten him out of the house. He had been texting me. What I did not know was he was texting her. And so she asked me, she's like, is that him? I'm like, this is grown folks' business. I'm not real sure you need to know who's texting me. I didn't tell her quite that rude, but that was my thought. And so when we went to the therapist, I told her, I was like, yeah, she seemed abnormally upset that he was texting. And it was that observation that led to the line of questions that the therapist asked, because she's trained and she knows how to get without persuading or trying to implant things in. Like, she knows the right questions for a kid to be able to open up and disclose this thing, right? And so as my daughter is telling us these things, I am just in awe. And you don't remember trauma in a linear aspect. It's some here, over here, we're going to go down here. And a lot of times the stories, when they come out initially, don't make sense. Even though it didn't make sense, I had to believe her, right? But I found out after the fact that she was at a sleepover with one of her little friends, and she told her. She told her, and nothing happened. Either the friend didn't believe her, or maybe my daughter told her, like, don't tell anybody. I would hope if somebody told one of my children that they're coming to me. That they're, now with my youngest son, he's probably just going to call the police on his own. That's just who he is. But if you can't do that, then I as a parent need to know. And so any parents that are listening, that's a conversation you can have with your child. If one of your children's friends say these kinds of things to you, even if they asked you to keep it in confidence, you need to tell us. You need us to be able to help. And one of the other things that I think helped her to start to recover, because this man and I were ministers at a church together. And I told her, I will never put you in his presence again. If we ever end up somewhere and he's there, I will get you out. You will never have to deal with him again. And that was the point where I cut all my ties. I cut ties with the church, with the nonprofit, because I couldn't have her around him. And everything he did to me kind of went on the back burner, because we've got to take care of her. And now she's all grown up, or at least she thinks she is. She's doing well.
It's good. And I have seen her. She's beautiful, doing good, and it's just great to see her smile and see you smile when she calls.
Yeah. She's pretty wonderful. People wonder, why do you stay in an abusive relationship? Like, it's your fault because you stayed. And we talked about this in the car, but statistically, a woman is going to leave her abuser 7 times before she leaves and doesn't come back.
Correct.
And had my experience not been so horrid, I would have gone back. We're homeless. We don't have, I mean, we are fighting to get into housing. We are fighting to start over. This shouldn't be this hard. Shouldn't be this hard. But it was. And I can see why women go back. I can very much see it. A friend of mine once said something that really stuck with me. And she said, when you're hungry, you'll eat anything. When you have never had examples of healthy relationships, because we're all designed for connection. At some level, we're designed to connect. And when you don't have that, you're going to take anything, especially if you have been starved of it for so long, right? And that's where we maybe don't see the red flags, or we see the red flags and we explain them away.
Maybe we think we can change them.
I know people that have thought that. I don't know if I ever thought that. That wasn't my story, but I know that it's a lot of people's.
Yeah, because there's fixers out there.
Mm-hmm.
So people think they can fix other people.
Yeah.
Okay, but you can finish. I just want to throw that out there.
Oh, you're good.
When we see the flags, that's where you were at. So when we see these flags and we think we can talk ourselves out of them and all that. So, yes, finish.
Yeah, because looking back, I can see now where there were red flags, but they were easily explained away. And because I have explained away so many red flags now, when I see one, I dip. I'm done. I'm done. I'm out. Goodbye. Toodles. And that's made it difficult to find a new church. That's made it difficult to make friends. And dating is something that I have not been interested in. Like, I just don't want to be bothered with it.
And now I think I believe you, because we have had this conversation before, like almost over a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked, we talked, what was our session on love,
Mm-hmm.
and the different ways of love. And you were like, no, like, I don't want to be in a relationship. And that was a year ago, and you're saying it again today.
Mm-hmm.
That's solid.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought life was supposed to look like one thing, right? Like, I thought it was supposed to be, you get married and you have the kids and you have the white picket fence. I know that sounds old fashioned, but I grew up in a town that had white picket fences. You know, that was the kind of thing I wanted. And people that were married stayed married. My dad was a very mean, violent alcoholic. And I grew up seeing, you know, Mr. Hyde come out to play. And so that was my normal. Like, if you have lived a life where your parents weren't abusive, where they were able to provide you a good home, good coping skills, bless your heart. And I don't mean that in any kind of sarcastic way, but God bless you on that. That's phenomenal, and it's wonderful. It doesn't give you the right to point your finger and judge me. Yeah. Now, you can support me. And support doesn't mean that you have to hand me money, and support doesn't mean that you have to let me stay at your house. That's not always what support looks like. There's support can be encouraging. And that was one of the things that I really did love once I got connected with Janice's Women's Center, right? We're in this terrible situation. It's like I can't see any way out. And now, a few months into it, my son loses his father to COVID. And by the way, he wasn't the abuser.
Yes, we always have to confirm that one.
Right.
It's like, nope.
It wasn't him.
No.
But
And this is your youngest
my youngest son.
Your youngest son.
Yeah, my youngest son lost his father. And he at that point had said, "Mom, I'm giving up on humanity."
Yeah.
It wasn't easy. We're in a shelter where, you know, there's a door and it's like a hallway, where there's other doors along that hallway, and the kids would run up and down and play and slam each other into the walls. Sometimes the people would fight, throwing each other up against the walls, and on a regular basis you would smell pot rolling in, and it wasn't even supposed to be on the premises. You know, so we'd have to roll up the towels and stuff them under the door and try to keep the smell out. And this is all he's hearing while his heart's breaking. And how do you help a teenager that's in that? And I will say that you were talking about fixers earlier. I think I tried to do that with my children. I tried to fix them, and I have gone through a lot of healing and a lot of therapy, and I have a lot more to go.
Yeah.
But one of the things that worked was being there and providing a safe space for him to experience whatever emotions he was experiencing. When I went in and told him that his dad passed, because he had been on the ventilator and everything, when I went in and told him, you know, he's gone, I just sat on the bed. And I'm here. And he was just quiet for a while. And then he bawled, and then he ended up in my lap. And he's strong and he's healing. And just the other day, he came in, and it was late one night. He was talking to me about being excited to go off to college. Or, you got your first college student in your program now.
I know, I'm so happy.
And he told me, I think my dad would be proud of me.
Yeah.
I said, I know your daddy would be proud of you. And he just bawled. And it was a healing thing. And when he was done, he got up and he went and did his thing. But it's because there's been a safe place created where he can express anger. And I know that the anger isn't at me. And that's been one of those things that we do. It's like, we can be angry. Yeah. But we don't deserve it to each other. Like, we got to make sure it's directed in the right place. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I told him, I was like, you know, sometimes there's just cuss appropriate moments. And I'm big on, you don't cuss. Like, I know that you cuss with your friends, but you're not going to cuss in front of me. And you're not going to cuss in front of other grown people. That's not what we do. I'm from the South.
I was going to say, is that your Southern swag?
Boy, it may be. I don't know. I got the hat and everything. But yeah, I told him, like, okay, you know, this whole thing stinks. I said, so what if we just have a cuss appropriate moment and we just cuss the whole thing out for a minute? And so we set the timer for a minute, and we both just, and it was kind of weird hearing each other do it. But we got it out, and everything was okay. And so that's a small concession to make with a really big payout. Yeah. So anyway, that helped. Another thing that helped with his dismal thing, we talked about last time about the birthday party that you did, but you also would support me when I was having those days. There were times where I would call you and I'm like, I think I just need to smile. Like, yeah. Can you help me smile?
Which you said every time you called me, you could feel that over the phone.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It was like sunshine was radiating through the telephone. And there's programs, and those are things that we need, but community is something that we need. And community where we're not going to be judged, Because anything that you're going to say about me, I've already said 10 times worse.
Yeah.
You know, I am. It's amazing to look back, right? Because of the extent of the abuse, I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. And because of the extent of that, I have met the clinical guidelines for what's called SMI, or serious mental illness. And it is very difficult for me to sit here and to say this where who knows who can hear it.
Yeah.
Because you say serious mental illness, and a lot of times people think of multiple personality disorders, schizophrenia, like the severe bipolars, and I'm not saying anything bad about any of those,
Correct.
because there are people that suffer. Just our system needs to be better at helping those
Yes.
people.
And another thing, not to cut you off, but when you say serious mental illness, a lot of times those who do not understand mental
Exactly.
illness will just sum that up as crazy.
Right.
And so we have to be mindful and educate ourselves more on what mental illness is. And there really is no look. You know, you sitting here today isn't something I could just look at you and go, oh man, she's suffering from serious mental illness. I mean, you having this discussion just so authentically, transparently, carrying yourself well, you know, you're educated, all of that. You know the Bible, you know, you have everything listed here. They would look at that and go, that's not mental illness.
Right.
She's not suffering.
Right. Right.
So I just wanted to share that.
No, that was right in the same vein that I was in. And speaking of vulnerability, Brene Brown has a quote that I love, and it's, vulnerability is not about winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up even when you can't control the outcome. I don't know what this outcome's going to be, but I showed up.
Yeah.
And because of that, I'm brave.
Yeah.
And this is what bravery can look like. And there's people out there that would say, oh, well, just getting on the mic and talking in front of people, that's brave. Well,
Yeah.
you know, but to really kind of pull back some of those layers and to see the scars is difficult. But the serious mental illness diagnosis is what made me eligible for a particular housing voucher. It's called permanent supportive housing. I'm able to have it until I don't need it anymore. I pay 30% of whatever my income is, and if I don't have any income, I don't have to pay. And there's all these guidelines and things that I had to reach, and it took me almost 2 years to get the voucher. And one of the biggest things was that people didn't want to rent to somebody who had a voucher.
Mm-hmm.
Because those kind of people do these kind of things to homes. I'm gonna keep a nice home. I haven't had a home. I'm thankful to have a home, right? And so then I had to come up with my spill, for a lack of better words, where I would tell them we're escaping abuse. And after over 2,000 calls, we finally found a place.
Yes. And with a lot of heartache, headache, and moments where you felt like you just wanted to give up, I was on that email strand.
Yes, you were.
I was irritated. I was flustered. I was rooting for you. I was broken for you. I was pissed. I was so pissed, to the point where I had to reach out to some people to stop this.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't until, although I had seen the email strand, I think it wasn't until your call, when you called me and you were like, I'm just going to admit myself in the hospital. And I'm like, no.
My blood pressure was through the roof.
And I
Whew.
could see, like, I seen all of that because it was making my blood pressure go through the roof. And so I'm watching your email strand, and it was email after email after email. It was every day faithfully. It was calling this property management, calling this organization, getting this organization to stop pulling this, or to get them to understand this, and to get them to own up to what it is they had did wrong, and to pass that information over to the other one who was in acceptance of trying to help you, all while trying to get the property management company to agree to these fees and accept this and accept that. I hope people hear everything that I'm saying right now, and all of those levels in which how it went from one person to this person to this person to this person and this person and this person. Receiving a voucher is not about a handout, because it takes a lot to get one. This isn't something easy that you can just receive and think, oh, okay, I'm about to be in a 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, whatever, I'm about to live fancy. It is not like that. The fact that you have been fighting for a voucher for 2 years with a minor school child, and you still did not have the level of assistance that you would have or was supposed to have,
Right.
because they say as long as it is a woman with children, children being the priority in that, that you should have received emergency services. You should have received priority services because you have a child.
Yep.
At this point, of course, I could see why your child would give up on humanity, because he had been from one situation, starting off with the abuse in the home, seeing that, witnessing that, and now having to be uprooted into one shelter who then informs you guys that you have to get out because we don't have funding, with lack of care for a child and the children in the program now. So now you have to seek another shelter. Now you have to go into another shelter. Then he loses his father. Then you're fighting for this voucher. Then you move over to another spot. Then you go over to transitional housing. Then you go. It was crap after crap after crap. The fact that I can even sit here and remember the level of crap that it was, and then I'm sure people can feel it in my tone right now. I was so irritated and flustered by what it is I had seen. It reminded me every bit of why I needed to make sure that Janice's Women's Center did not put any woman through this amount of systemic barriers and abuse ever.
Right. And just because the people at home don't know, I wasn't getting any results, and I was running out of time. I was about to be on the street. I was about to lose my voucher. And so I started copying my entire support network on every single email. The people at the permanent supportive housing place, the people at the transitional place, the people that are my sexual assault advocates, with Janice's Women's Center. And we had this string, and nobody could believe, because I had been telling people, but people have a tendency to think people exaggerate, and sometimes they do. But I wasn't that time.
And I believed because I had been there.
Yep.
I had seen it. That's why I named everything Janice, because she went through it.
Yep. And then you started making moves behind the scenes that I didn't even know about, and to kind of drive home the level of inadequate help. The person that was my contact person is no longer with that company. So if nothing else, maybe somebody will have it a little
Exactly.
a little bit easier.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Love that. I love that. Yeah, behind the scenes is best for me. Watching you ladies be empowered by what it is that you can do is very important. You doing it and stepping out there. Unfortunately, you have to feel the raft. It does hurt, but it's like any other thing. So even if you weren't in, a program, and you were just out here, on your own, you would have to feel that without anyone on the back end. And so, yeah, I have to put you through that.
And I just kind of want to touch a little bit on the voucher if we can. I am going to have this voucher as long as I need it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all of my life, I have worked, and I have worked real hard. I've worked 2 and 3 jobs. I've put into the system, right? And as soon as I'm physically and mentally able to get back into the workforce, I am. I'm not going to just sit back and like, oh, well, I got easy living now. Let me put my feet up and we're going to coast. That's not what life wants to look like to me.
Yeah.
And so many people have an idea of what abuse looks like. And you kind of touched on this earlier, if I don't have bruises and scratches, I'm not being abused.
Yeah.
But a bruise is super easy to heal from. Some of that other stuff, it isn't. And, you hear people talk a lot about wanting justice. And so I was reading this book, and when I say read a book, I mean I'm listening to an audiobook.
That's what you mean.
That's what I mean, yeah. The only book I think I read is my Bible, but it was talking about justice and what is justice. And it's getting what's just. Well, what's just? What you deserve. What I deserve. So I would have loved to have seen this man in jail. That would have felt like justice to me. But is that really justice? And it's not. It's what I deserve. And I deserve to be free. And I have a quote by Mark Twain that I think will help kind of tie it all in together, is forgiveness is the fragrance the violet sheds on the heels that have crushed it. I can forgive and I can release this sweet odor into the world, and I can make it just a little bit better and a whole lot better for me by beginning to learn to let it go.
I love it. Well, that is all the time we have today. So to all of our listeners, I want to thank you for being a part of Talk Therapy. Angelique, I want to thank you for being transparent, for being open, for being loving, for sharing your story and your journey, for advocating for yourself, and providing a platform for others to advocate for themselves. I'm your host, Shante Saulsberry, and this is Talk Therapy on Central City Radio.